simply for licensing reasons?
Well, actually, mine's not. It's a free version. SQL Express. It's free. There's no, we don't want to pay any.
Yeah, I don't want to get licensing issues.
I agree. Microsoft has it free.
Yeah, you need to start here. Sorry.
Stevie, how do I get to the live stream?
Can I just introduce you a little bit? All right, everyone, I think we probably can get started. This year we are very fortunate to have a true luminary from the CoCo's vibrant past. Someone, if you've listened to the podcast or if you've watched Stevie Stroh's YouTube videos, you have some familiarity with. An accomplished programmer, gave us a couple of great games, maybe more than a couple, gave us a UUCP package. An all-around nice guy, actually fun to talk to and not a Bjork hole. So without further ado, Mr. Rick Adams.
Well, the 26th annual last CoCoFEST, man, it's a good thing I came out here this year, being the last one and all. Sort of reminds me of Final Fantasy. They're up to 15 now. Fantasy wasn't that final, was it? Well, they may run out of Roman numerals at some point, but we won't. Now, in 1990, the Color Computer 3 was discontinued, and that was way back. It was like Home Alone 0 was in the theaters, and Windows 3.0 was released. So that's been a while. This is Macaulay Culkin these days. He's still going, and so are we. So we're still coming out with software and hardware, and I've seen it in the exhibit room. And so we have to explain, to people at work. It's like, you're going to what now? Why are you there? It's like, well, my explanation for me is that I'm that guy. Now that's not exactly fair. We're not that guy exactly. We do like our tech on the bleeding edge, and we are early adopters, but also when we have tech that we like, we hold on to it. I think an example would be the Pebble smartwatch that I have on my watch, on my wrist. And so I would argue an Apple Watch would be a better watch than this, but I like this one because I can program it. So I programmed that watch face, and it's got things on it that you wouldn't have on a normal watch face, like like there's the weather and the time, and how many people are on my website right now, and all that sort of thing. So you're not going to get that with an Apple Watch. But unfortunately, the Pebble Watch is no more. Pebble was bought out by Fitbit because they wanted to close it down and get rid of their largest competitor. So here I am with my with my watch, and it runs various, with a couple of button pushes on my watch, I can control various things around the house. Which brings me to a little side story, which is that my wife has had to deal with being married to a tech guy. And it's been kind of an adventure for her. And maybe she thought she was going to marry somebody like that, but instead she got somebody like that. And so that plays itself out in interesting ways. My wife she doesn't like to stick out. She likes to blend in. Everything should be normal. Our house should look the same as all other houses on the block. She's not into people with strange looking desks that look like that. So we have conversations such as, say, honey, what's in one of those strange things that are in that box that you just bought from Amazon? Oh yeah, those. Well, those are diffused lens RGB LEDs, and each of them has a WS2811 controller. They're Christmas lights. Christmas lights. Oh, Christmas lights. Yeah, I would like to put those in the living room windows. Oh, yeah, that sounds... Wait, what is that? Well, that's a 12 amp power supply, and 800 LEDs, and a Raspberry Pi. So there are Christmas lights. Oh, there's 200 in the basement windows also, with a separate Raspberry Pi down there. And so now your house looks like that. And that's when she realized she didn't want to live in that house, but she's living in that house. So she says, okay, well, all right, mister, that's all right. That's good for Christmas, but when Christmas is over, those are coming down. Because I couldn't imagine anything different that you could possibly do with weight. I think that we have reached peak nerd right here. So she says, that is it. Those are banished to the basement. You can put them in the basement windows, but not the top windows, okay? I said, basement windows, check. Yeah, we'll get that going on. So every night, so they're on, they're set up in etc. cron tab to start every night, and they go until 11 o'clock at night, and then they wake up again at 4 a.m. in the morning, and then they go until sunset. So let's see if I can remember what was. Okay. Oh yeah. So they can come down now, right? It's February, right? No, we're just getting started. So yeah, okay, it's March now. March, we can quit now, right? No, we're still going. St. Patrick's Day. Well, let's see, what was the next thing? Oh, yeah, so she knew early on there was trouble because when we were first married, we hardly had 2 pennies to rub together, and we lived in an unheated country farmhouse. And she was freezing. So she had her idea of, we got a income tax check coming in, a windfall. It's like we could afford to buy something. So she said, I know just what I want us to buy. We want to buy a kerosene heater. I got it all figured out. Specs on it say it'll heat a small warehouse, and I like the sound of that. So we're getting a kerosene heater. And I said, well, actually, I got some guys at work that just bought color computers, and they're telling me really nice things about it. I want to get one of those. Dale Lear is working on a game on that, and she says, I want to be warm. We're getting a kerosene heater, and that is it. So when I bought the computer, it and me were banished to the back room of the house, which was like the back porch with all of the large heat-sapping windows and the drafty door. And so we toiled back there and learning assembler. And I got an EditAssemb Plus cartridge and a cassette tape player. And and a TV set. We were all set up back there. So I started working on Temple of Ram. And that was about the program. So working back there for long hours, and pretty soon she's saying, you know, I'm getting real tired of you being back there all the time in that back room with that damn computer. You know, so Temple of Ram came about because I was a big fan of, who made the adventure cart?
Warren Robinette.
Yeah, Warren Robinette. Yeah, that was an Atari VCS system thing. Was it Activision that did that?
Nope, that was actually Atari.
Okay. I was a big fan of that, but I didn't like the way that, I loved the game, but you would go to the edge of the screen, and you would go off the edge of the screen, and blink, you would be in another screen, and you'd be on the left. So you do it that way. And I'm like, why can't you just smooth scroll the thing as soon as you get toward the close of the edge? Why can't you just smooth scroll it over? So that's what I did with that. Plus, I was a big fan of the Catherine Durini Chronicles series of novels, which were sort of medieval, like fantasy type things. So that's where the transfer portals came in, that little circle with the dot in it. You hit that, and all of a sudden, blink, you're someplace else. And that was an element from the Durini novels that I incorporated into the game. So I wrote up a whole, I wrote up the instruction booklet and everything. It was like, you know, this ancient race of sorcerers had this homeland, and the bad guys came, and the orcs drove them out, and they took over the Temple of Ram, which was the center of their society, and so got that all ready, and sent that off to Candy. Dale Lear was my co-worker. By that time, had sent off Doubleback, and they had bought it, and so Dale told me, well, you should hear back from them in about 3 weeks. I was like, 3 weeks? That's, you know, 21 days. And I'm sorry, I'm just counting off the days. And after about 1.5 weeks, Mark Siegel called me up. I remember I was at work, and he said, this is Mark Siegel at Tandy. Hello. You know? And he says, we'd like to buy your game. Oh, yeah. That'd be okay with you? Yeah, that would be fascinating, really. And he says, I love it. It's a beautiful game. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that quite right. Could you say that again? I mean, that's a cliche. But I actually experienced it, because it's like, I heard the words. I knew what they meant. But I was just so overcome, I couldn't process it. I was like, I have to hear that again to really understand what you said. And I said, it's a beautiful game. You know, and I was like, man, it's music to my ears. He says, I love the game. He says, hate the name though. Temple of Ram, yeah, we're changing that. And I said, okay, you can change that to whatever you want. But they never, you know, that never came out again, so Temple of Ram it was. And so the whole instruction book that I wrote, well, they tossed that all out. You know, so, and they didn't tell me. So they sent me a cartridge, and I got it, ripped off the shrink wrap immediately, opened it up, and opened up the instruction booklet, and it says, you are a space explorer for the World Federation of Worlds, and you have been tasked with exploring the planet Romlock. And, you know, I was like, where did this come from? You know, it's like, oh, you gave it a space theme. It has to have a space. All right, fine. So, and so then the first royalty check rolled around. And I opened it, and I read the figures, but once again, it's like, my brain's not processing this. And I showed it to my wife, and she says, honey, why don't you go in the back room and tinker with that damn computer?
Did she get the heater?
She did. With the second, there was the federal income tax check, and we bought the computer with that. And then there was the state check, and we got the heater with that. But to this day, she's kind of salty that those two items were bought in that particular order. So I had a great success with Temple of Ram, and that felt really good. So I decided to let's see if we can make lightning strike twice. So I worked on another game, which I called Bomb Threat. And that one, I shot that around, and Tandy didn't want to buy it. They did suggest some changes to it, and I made the changes, and then they just weren't getting back to me, and I kind of bugged them a bit, and then they said, okay, we're just, okay, since you asked so insistently, we're not going to buy it. So, so that one languished for many years. But I had the discs for it in the basement. I knew right where they were. And, well, many years went by, and it's like, I'd like to take a look at that game again. Let's see if I can find those discs. Couldn't find them. So, in my basement, it's kind of an archaeological adventure to go into my basement because there's a lot of stuff down there. So, always figured, yeah, well, it wasn't where I last left it, but somewhere in the Precambrian layer of that archaeological dig is probably the discs. And I would go down on, I would, put my little headlamp on and go down there every once in a while and dig for it. Over the years, it's like, we finally concluded it's just not there. So, one day my kids were talking about, they love that game, because they remember playing it. They played the Temple of Ram to death. And they played that game, which, they didn't call it Bomb Threat. They called it the tractor game because it had a little tractor moving around and moving boxes. And one day my oldest son was talking to my middle son, and they were reminiscing about that game. And they said, hey, you remember Dad used to come with us to the elementary schools when they had, like, you're visiting Dad to tell the class what he does and spice up the class day, So I would, make video games. I would make VCR tapes of me playing the games and then come and show them at the school. They said, we have one of those. We know where those are. So they came home, ran down to the basement, and pulled it out. And so here is my lost game. Load-M Bomb. I don't talk about this game much while going through TSA. And there it is. 1984, huh? Yeah. So there's the title screen. And then here's player one's going to play it. So you're in charge of a warehouse full of merchandise. And some crazy guy has put bombs in the various crates in the warehouse. Some of them are out in the open, and some of them are hidden inside the crates. Well, that one just killed me. So that's life one gone. You notice there's 2 tractors inside now. So now there's more bombs and more crates. And however, so you can push the crates away from the bombs, or the bombs away from the crates if you're feeling really lucky. And then after all the bombs exploded, it adds up. How much merchandise did you save? Oops, there went the crate full of Dino Wars. So let's see, so what's next here? Shanghai, yes, that was fun. So Activision called me up. I really liked Activision. Activision had a good rep with me because I liked all of their games. So when they called me up and said, hey, Mark Siegel gave us your number. Yes. And we would like you to do a game for us. Yes, I'd like that very much. So they gave me this, and so this was already working on a number of other computers, so I just had to port it over to the color computer. And let's see, not much to say about that, other than, well, the little Easter egg. Oh, there's an Easter egg in Temple of Ram, too. You probably know about it.
This game is also known as the Mahjong clone.
Yes.
As it was recently referred to.
Yes, yes.
No, it was a little bit more forceful than that.
Yeah.
The goatee party.
Yeah, so it was, I ported this from, this game was done on other computers, so I just ported it for the for the color computer. But porting does involve writing it from scratch, but you have to look at the specs and stuff and figure out how it's supposed to look. And during all of the development, they had yellow tiles, yellow edges on the tiles, so it was supposed to be like a mahjong set. And mahjong sets, when they get old, the edges of the actual like ivory tiles, turn yellow. It needs some retro bright or something. So, and so that's what it looked like all during development. And then at the very last moment, they said, okay, now for the last change before we roll this out, we want you to change to a different color set. We don't like the yellow edges. So I made a little hot spot, up in the left corner. Up about, it's real tiny. It's about here. And you click on that. It's like 1 pixel by 1 pixel because I was really scared that they would find it. And but they, nobody did. And if you click on that, then you get a third, rather than RGB and composite, you get a third color set, which was the original color set, which is how I wanted to play it, because that's how I got used to seeing it. So the Easter egg on Temple of Rom is that if you hold the button down long enough, you can go through walls. And it doesn't really help you. I had grandiose plans for that game. I was going to put like a little McDonald's on the outside so you could visit it if you went through the walls. And that never happened. And then there, up toward the top of the maze, there was a really large room that was the size of the screen, and there was going to be like a working Space Invaders game in there. Well, that never happened. Maybe in the next version. So that was the Easter egg for that. So what else did I wanted to say about Shanghai? I do not remember.
A little message you left to the guy who did this assembly.
Thank you. That was it. Thank you. I got a call from the guy who was burning the ROMs when they were making the Shanghai cartridges, and he had a question for me. I had put a little message in, like at the very end of the image. That said, "Hello, Don. Good to see you again." And this was a reference to a guy named Don Hutchison who had a little hobby of disassembling all our ROMs and figuring out how we did things. And so I left a message for him. Well, the guy who's burning the ROMs, he says, "Well, I gotta make sure this image is okay. So let me take a look at it." And it's like, "Hi, Don. Good to see you again." The guy's name was Don. He was one spooked individual when he called me up, let me tell you. So that brings me to The Last Ninja. So Activision called me up again, and they said, "Well, we want you to do another game for us." And I said, "That sounds great." And it turns out they told me that Dale Lear had turned it down. And Dale Lear is a pretty smart guy. That should have been a clue for me, but it wasn't. They said, so they told me all, here's the time schedule, here's what we want you to do. And it's like, okay, that sounds like a really tough project. And that sounds like a really insane time schedule. But I'm young, I'm strong, I can pull this off. I was wrong. So I worked on that thing. So I went in the back room and worked on that for, and I was working on it till 2 a.m. every night. And eventually it just turned out, to make a long story short, it's like, I can't do this. So my project manager was the same one that I had for Shanghai. It was a really nice lady. Her first name was Sherry, I forget her last name. And they had told me, if it turns out that you can't make the schedule, let us know right away. I said, okay, well, time to face the music. So I called them up and said, all right, I'm not going to make it. They said, okay, we'll get back to you. And so they did, and so they called me down to Activision headquarters once again. And yeah, everybody loves a good train wreck. I have a saying about this project, which is that success has many fathers, failure is an orphan, but everyone loves a good train wreck. So everybody that wants, I always get these phone calls. Hey, are you Rick Adams? Yeah. You're the one. The guy that did the color computer games. Yeah. Hey, look, I'm doing a book. I want to talk about this. It's like, well, there's a reason for that. It's a good story. I do not hold it against them. I mean, what are you going to do? That's the big story, which is the game that didn't happen. So they called me down. I walked the final mile down to the door where they opened it up. They said, we found another developer that we've got to take it. And so they opened up the door, and there was that guy. Steve Bjork. Now, so Steve was really happy because it's like, oh, I get to do this game. This is going to be awesome. And so they're pulling me in to rescue this game. And so he's looking over the source code as I walk in the door. He said, oh, I see your problem right here. You got the upper levels programmed in C and the lower levels in assembler. No, that needs to be all in assembler. That'll make it much more efficient. It's like, well, there's a degree of truth in what he says, but it doesn't make that much different if the upper level is written in C. But whatever you say, because at that point, I wanted to be rid of this project. So, they told me, hey, all the early completion bonuses that we were going to give you if you did this game on time, we're going to give those to Steve. Would that be okay with you? And I said, well, early completion bonus is early completion bonus, and that's 0 for 3. Yeah, give it to Steve. Give 2 of them to Steve. I don't care as long as I walk out of here, still alive. So Steve said he'd take it on, and he was really happy. He's like, and he heard that he's going to get that money. And he's like, oh man, we are going to make a mint. This is awesome. And he's looking over the source code. Yeah, I can fix this. I can fix this. This is going to be awesome. So jump forward about a year or so, and we're in a bar after a Rainbow Fest, and Steve's across the table from me, and he was not a happy camper. And he leans over to me and he says, I'll have you know we took a bath on that game. And he was kind of mad. He was kind of wanting to pick a bone with me, and I just told him, Steve, it was a really unhappy time for all concerned. That's just all I'm going to say about that. He was still sort of staring daggers at me, and I decided, maybe I should go back to my room and do something else for a while. So now let's see. The thing about Steve is that he's done more. I think he's done more games than anybody else. He's done more games than Dale, right? Certainly more than me. You remember how? Let's see. I have to go into diplomatic mode here, because there are some people that are just dying for me to say something bad about Steve. He's a guy that has that kind of guy hanging around. I like Steve. I do understand that there are a lot of people that think he has an overdeveloped sense of his place in the universe. For me, that's part of his charm. Your mileage may vary, but I absolutely have to like the guy, and I've explained that to people, and they yeah.
He actually, one of the CoCoFEST he was at, said, kind of apologized, says, I realized in the past I've come on too strong and things like that. And so he kind of acknowledged his personality flaws in the past.
Yep. And I've got mine, and so when I say that I like Steve Bjork, I'm not being coy. I actually do like the guy, but when I explain what he's like to people, they're like, well, you sound like you need to make up your mind. Do you love him or do you hate him? And I'm like, well, can't it be both? And I thought, how do I explain this to people? And so then it suddenly dawned on me. Do you know there was a writer for Rainbow, Marty Goodman, and they always called him the Howard Cosell of the CoCo world. Because Howard Cosell is, very controversial, very outspoken, very brash, and that's the sort of person that Marty was. So I said, well, so who's the person that corresponds to Steve Bjork? And then it was like, it's obvious. Who do we know that has a large body of work? Is enviably secure about his place in the universe, but has some people that don't like him. And there you have it. Oh my! It's perfect. Steve Bjork is William frickin' Shatner. And that really explains it, because even Takei loves the Shat. Everyone loves the Shat. And that's just how it is.
The Shat.
Gotta have some William Shat.
Is that stats for anything?
Huh?
Is Shat has stats for anything?
No, it isn't. Who was the guy that played Wesley on The Next Generation? I can't. Will Wheaton. Yeah, he has a love-hate relationship with William Shatner. He has a long story where he relates how when he first met William Shatner was kind of a jerk to him, and so he always refers to him very derogatorily as William frickin' Shatner. Only he doesn't use the word frickin'. So WFS for short. So what's next? Yes, Last Ninja, got rid of it. My wife still says, anytime I'm thinking about taking on a new project, she says, now this isn't going to be another Last Ninja deal, right? Because that project really hurt me. It probably hurt Steve too, and I'm sorry about that.
Didn't that game get finished? Did somebody finish that game?
No, nobody did. He brought his discs of the game to a CoCoFEST once, and I've seen a video where he sort of demoed it. And earlier, to somebody who asked, I think it was one of the podcasts, I said that what I saw in the video was like no different than what I gave him. That's actually not true. I took a closer look at the video, and the enemies did like move around and kind of looked like they were going to fight you. So he did do other things. He didn't look exactly like it did when I handed it to him. So I slammed it. So just set the record straight.
What was the problem with the Last Ninja? Was it size? Was it the CoCo wasn't powerful enough?
Well, they wanted to do it in OS 9, and I didn't think OS 9 was good. I like OS 9, but I didn't think OS 9 was a good fit for that game. What are you doing? Huh? He's getting a legal record.
2018.
The problem with the game was that the timetable was insane. It was like 3 or 4 months, and the game was very complex, and there were no specs. They gave us an Amiga and said, "Here's the game on an Amiga. Play that through, and then port it." And it's like, well, I can't play it through. I can't get past level 3. They give me data for all the levels, and I can draw all the levels. Steve was really fit to be tied. He said there was this one screen where there was a river and there was stepping stones in the river, and you hop across the stepping stones. Okay, I can do that. Yeah, what they didn't tell me was that when you got halfway across, this frickin' dragon came out of the river and does battle with you. Nobody ever mentioned that little thing to me. So he didn't think that was fair, and I didn't think that was fair either. And yeah, it just couldn't be done in the time frame that they gave us.
Time was the real problem.
Yeah, that's probably true.
And probably that they were making it base it on the Amiga version instead of some like the Commodore 64 versions.
Right, and they didn't give you good specs. and I was overconfident. You know, I thought this is going to be tough, but I can do it. I'm hot stuff. Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, right. So that was it was a good life lesson for me. It was like, you know, number one, no is a very useful word, and two, I am not immortal. So after that was over, it's like I came out of that room, gave it to Steve York. Glory, hallelujah! I am free. I'm free at last. And so then I was like, well, what's my next game gonna? Well, I don't want to do a game. I'm not in the mood to do a game right now. I don't want to do anything. So I did a whole lot of nothing for a while, and you know, then I started doing things for OS 9, various things here and there, including the UUCP package. That was kind of fun. Should I go down that rabbit hole, the UUCP package?
Sure.
Okay. Well, there was like I was like doing stuff for Delphi then, and then they had, you know, so you had the Delphi people and you had the CompuServe people, and they had sort of a friendly rivalry going. And it was Mark Griffith and some people were making a lot of noise about they were working on a UUCP package. And I had all kinds of people telling me, Rick, you should do a UUCP package. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not in the mood. Sorry. Oh no, really, you should. And they'd send me like specs for, you know, all the different documents that documented how it all worked and stuff. And I was the Usenet administrator at our Usenet node at work, you know, so I knew what UUCP was and how it worked and stuff, but, you know, I didn't want to really do anything on it. So all the CompuServe people were saying, you know, we're almost ready, we have it almost ready, and it's like, in about a week, we're going to come out with it, it's going to be awesome, and we're going to post it, and you can download it on CompuServe only. And that kind of stuck in my craw a little. Although when I thought about it, it's like, well, you know, they did the work. They get to say what happens to their creation. That is fair. But I didn't like it. So, where were those specs again? So I pulled them down off the shelf and I started reading through and saying, oh, let me try this out. So, in about 3 weeks, I had something sort of up and running. I could, you know, send email. And they had the color computer, I don't know if it was the mailing list or if it was the Usenet group. But Mark Griffith or one of their people posted, if you can read this, this will be the first posting to this mailing list from a color computer. And I'd say, actually, I posted one a week ago. And to their credit, they were really nice. They're like, holy crap, really? You've been working on this? That's awesome. We didn't know you were working on that. Oh, we are so happy about that. You know, so they were really nice about it. You know, it was like, you know, so that's how that happened. And then various people upgraded that. Bill Noble couldn't be here, unfortunately. I would have liked to have met him. Who else was on it?
Bob Gilson.
Yes.
Worked on that a little bit too. Wow.
Yep. So that's what happened with that. So now we come to bomb threat. So Curtis, was it you that got me started on emulators?
Yeah.
You should try it. Yeah, a whole bunch of people on Skype said you should try out these emulators. And I said, you know, so I tried them out. It's like, wow, that's a code computer on my laptop. That's pretty great. And then all these people were saying, okay, now here's how you do a development environment. You know, and I said, oh, really? Okay, so I can do a development environment on my Raspberry Pi or on Windows. You know, so bit by bit I got that going. And then I said, well, I got the gameplay video for I made one more trip to the basement to look for those discs, and I couldn't find them. I said, let's see what I can do. So this is the title screen from an emulator, and I could probably just pull it up right now, actually. So I got it. I knew I wasn't going to do the whole game for the show. You know, it's like, well, if I can do the title screen, that'll be pretty good. You know, that'll be enough. You know, and then I got the title screen and a tiny bit of gameplay. So let's see if I can pull that up.
Need a couple icons there.
Yeah, I think. Well, it moved everything around on my desktop, you know.
It's easier to find them all when they're all just right out there.
Yeah. Where's the arranged by CoCo menu item? Yeah, I can't find anything. No, not quite. No, it's not there. Okay, well, tomorrow I'll be showing. Well, right now I'm just looking for a computer.
My computer.
It's like, where did I put that? No.
My computer, I don't have it. Halfway down on the right. There you go.
So did I put that?
Running low on disk space there too.
Yep.
All that CoCo content.
Nope, not there. Oh, CoCo, there we go. Bomb threat. All right. So actually, let me find my VCC icon.
To the right, midway down.
It's like the Shanghai pixel.
So we're getting tile set to this?
Okay, here we go.
There we go.
The sounds are not the same. My kids are not happy about that. They're all about the sounds.
Animated.
Yep. So I'll hit 1 for 1 player game, or you can hit 2 for 2 player game. It won't do you any good.
He starts over. That's really cool though. Seeing it.
So, I'm back. You have a question?
I got one question for you.
Sure.
You know, you know about the sequel to Temple of Ron, don't you? Yeah, in Chicago, yeah, it's City Hall.
Follow manual.
Yeah. Well, he is the emperor, isn't
So any more questions? Because I got no more, so.
Wow. Where'd you get that really cool shirt that you're wearing?
See that crazy man that just asked me the question.
The design on the shirt, of course.
Who's the artist?
Oh, right, yeah, my brother Joel. I mean, my son. I'm not nervous or anything, no.
That's good, he's not promoting Stevie. Okay, that makes much more sense.
Now, where'd you get your shirt from, Alan?
This was my favorite of all the shirts that he did, so I
Yeah,
decided I was going to represent and put this on.
Yeah, that's very cool.
So, yeah, my sons were my beta testers. My daughter hadn't been born yet. Although my Shanghai manager sent flowers when she was born. So
I think it's very cool how that project came back together from a Skype group we created for our weekly talk show, and it turned into you starting this project again. So
Right.
That's absolutely amazing.
And let me tell you, it's like, you know, you may think of me as a star. I'm not the star. You guys are the stars. You know, because you've been coming here year after year. You're producing all the software and the hardware. You know, I'm just coming back. And where was I going with that? I was going somewhere with that.
Give it a start. Wrap it up.
Yeah, wrapping up. Yeah, I don't know. My brain is just sort of fried now. Yes?
Okay, developing in 1984, developing in 2017 for the CoCo. What's the biggest difference you've been seeing?
Oh my goodness, yes! That brings me back to a little side story on Temple of Ram that I forgot to tell you, which some of you have probably heard. Yes, Temple of Ram, cassette tapes. assembler program. Well, actually it was on 3 cassette tapes, 3 20-minute cassette tapes. So when I had to do some development on Temple of Ram, I had to figure out which tape the problem was on, read that in, that's 20 minutes, work on that for a while, and then write that out. That's 20 minutes more. If I wanted to play the whole game, you had to load the first 20 minutes. Oh no, actually when you assembled it, you would have to load in the source, assemble it, and I don't even remember how it all fit together, but somehow it all fit together into one thing. So if somebody disassembles Temple of Ram, they'll find a very strange structure. They'll find a bunch of code, nothing, a bunch of code, nothing, and a bunch of code. And with jumps through indirects in between them. And that's because this was on the first tape, that was on the second tape, that was on the third tape. But my color computer at the time, and the first color computer that I had, was with the chiclet keys, silver, and it had a problem in the power supply, where if the power supply was on too long, or it got too hot, it would start fuzzing, you'd see the video fuzzing out, and then it would die. And so I wanted to track down what the problem was, so I got a can of Freon, took the cover off. The cover's off at all the time on mine. And when it would start to fuzz out, I grabbed the Freon, I go, and it would stabilize. Well, one time it starts to fuzz out, and I'm running out of 20-minute tape, and I'm in the middle of the tape. I don't want to have to do that all over again. I'm going to have to read in the 20 minutes, make the changes if I can remember what those were, and write it back out again, another 20 minutes. I don't want that. So I want this thing to work. So I would spray it with Freon, and the power supply would turn into a little ice sculpture, and it would stabilize long enough to write out the last block of the tape. Well, I worked pretty good, and I sort of got used to doing that. Until one day, I'm writing out a tape, and the video starts to fuzz out a little bit. I grab the Freon, and I pointed it, and nothing happened. And I'm like, oh no. So I leaned over, I'm like, I'm doing that, and then the tape relay is clicking. Is that the last one? Nope. And little stars are appearing in front of my eyes. And finally I hear that click. There's a special sound to the last click. It's like, that is the last one. It's like, oh, that's it. So I got a new CoCo after that.
Very cool. All right, well, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate you being part of our podcast and our CoCoFEST.
All right.
It's awesome. So, you guys can stay seated. I've got the next slot, and we'll have another slot. After mine. If you got the schedule, it's got it printed. But mine should start basically as soon as they get set up here. Don't forget your credentials.
Oh no, don't kick me out.
Good job, Rick. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Yes. Somebody got smart. Yes.
Hello. Neil, are you in here? Do you know how to work this in?
I have a presentation remote.
I've got one in my bag.
Oh, okay.
I didn't bring it over here, but
The mobile application for PC client is the same.
I can't make it work. Somebody go get Neil. Somebody go get Neil.
Somebody oatmeal, what?
John Linville gave her is that something you need to go to the Pitre?
Yeah, well, it seems to be stuck on the HDMI source. But I don't see a button that says, oh, one of those. Huh?
Yeah.
I don't see the remote. Alright, so. Well, I guess that's good enough.
Did I leave my schedule up here? I did, yeah.
Okay. Alright, can somebody announce in the other room that, that they want to?
Somebody else be the big mouth?
Well, it's just easier, somebody else.
Yeah.
Rick got away with sitting down, maybe I could too.
Yeah. Did I go over? I don't know how long I was talking.
Oh, yeah, a little bit, that's alright.
Okay.
We have some slack built in.
Nothing we can do about it now.
Yeah. Alright, well, maybe nobody wants to come, so we'll just talk. Alright, well, welcome to my talk on the project I've been working on for enhancing audio and improving storage for games on CoCos. Yay! So, who am I? Okay, who doesn't know who I am? I'm John Linville. I created a game called Farfall a few years back. Some of you might be familiar with. Also, was half, now a third of the CoCo Crew podcast. A lot of you probably listen to me talk a lot more than anybody should, but anyway, so that's who I am, right? But really, who am I? Okay, well, I really am legitimately a serious computing professional. I have a master's degree in computer engineering. I'm employed by a major operating system vendor for real computers out there in the real world. My initial attraction to the CoCo after college was because I became aware of some of its serious capabilities, which were pretty impressive back in the day. Things like being able to run OS 9 and multitask and whatever else, about things like the superiority of the 6809 processor over some of the competitors, that sort of thing. Oh, well, let's see. Thing is, the serious attitude, I feel like it held me back for years, because I felt like I had to justify the time I spent with the CoCo. Like, well, what does it do? Why would you use that? I felt like I had to make it do something useful, or at least, make it turn the lights on and off in the house, or something. But that really limits your projects, right? It limits how much you can do. There's only so much useful you can do, and realistically, especially nowadays, I mean, if you really want the most productive use or the most economic use, there's probably better ways out there. But see, the CoCo is still as good at games as it ever was. Now, you might argue it wasn't that good compared to some other machines, but it was good enough for us, right? We're here. We enjoyed the games on the CoCo. You can still play those games. And the thing is, normal people sort of get it. Whereas they might not get it if you want to sit down and use Dynacalc to do your taxes, they're not gonna get that. I don't get that, why would you do that? But if you wanna sit down and play Farfall, I'm with you, I totally get that, right? And even Bomb Threat looks pretty cool, right? So I mean, games are still fun, well, anyway, I think it's a good way to use the computer and to exert yourself in the hobby. Exercise your will against the machine, that sort of stuff. Anyway, so I was going to just talk about the games card that I've been producing, but the more I talked about it, the more I've worked on the presentation, the more this turned into kind of an overview of the process that I've been pursuing about improving things for the CoCo, and why have I done stuff, how have I done stuff, whatever. So if you forgive me while I diverge a little bit. So basically you start with identifying a systemic problem, prototype some solutions, you iterate, and sometimes you find new problems, right? So let's start with digital joysticks for the CoCo. This is something most people, how many people like the black analog non-self-centering joysticks for the CoCo? You like them?
For certain games.
For certain games, yes.
Well, okay, maybe for specific games, right? But in general, I don't think anybody actually likes them for in a general. Let's go play Pac-Man kind of stance, right? So this was an early thing that I'd really like to be able to use a digital style joystick, right? And so those of you who've been here before, you've seen my Farfall joystick, one with the arcade parts, whatever. So that's what this is based around. It's just a schematic for implementing a joystick that will interface a digital style joystick to the CoCo and make it work. So I published this schematic a while back. Neil produced a copy. A couple other people may have used them, but really the schematic, that's a little difficult for people to use, right? A lot of people can't even read the schematic, and it's a little work. There's arts and crafts and putting everything together, whatever. So one step farther is you can use that same circuit and you can hack this SMS adapter, or SMS joypad. Same circuit, you get the same effect. You don't have to build a plastic box or whatever, it's already there, right? That worked for some people. I had a lot of people ask me how I did this. I published a blog post on this one. But it's really an iteration on that, the schematic. Still not something most people want to do. Most people don't want to cut in and do soldering or whatever. Most people, a lot of people don't want to hack it just because it's an antique item also, right? You don't want to destroy one old thing just to enhance the other old thing. So, all right, so then the next step, these are my initial prototypes for using Atari style joysticks on the CoCo. And that way you can use them, you don't have to modify them, you just plug them in and they work. And for a lot of games on the CoCo, there's no modification, they just work, right? Because a lot of games just use them in a digital fashion anyway. So there's that iteration. And then the next step was actually to go into production with that. And so now we've got Neil producing them, and if you want that kind of equipment for your CoCo, you can buy it right off the rack, so to speak. So that's just sort of the process we're looking at for improvement. Go from an idea and through some prototypes and actually get to something that's producible. Okay. So again, when I was working on Farfall, I always thought of it as not only an arcade style game, but a cartridge game. And at that point, in 2012, there was no easy way to produce cartridges for the CoCo. About that time, was it Mark Blair produced a circuit board if you wanted to get another cartridge with a case. But other than that, there was no real easy way to do it. So I kind of worked through a process, and I produced this package for Farfall, which was my resin cast plastic cases, homemade, stuff in a VHS storage box. You can see the little spacers in there, those are dominoes, just for set them up and knock them down. Whatever. You can buy those in bulk and glue that down as a spacer. They didn't stick very well, so that's another cases, but it was a way to do it. But realistically, it's kind of hard to package, whatever. So now, if you go to my table, I can buy this package game. molded plastic case VHS printed circuit boards that are sort of for purpose built, that are a lot cheaper than using the Mark variable cards. Anyway, so we got a process, right? Sometimes the process leads to new problems. One of the problems with being able to produce, getting the injection molded cases, we bought 1,000 of them. We haven't sold 1,000 of the games yet. And if you'd like to help us get toward our goal of 1,000, certainly be welcome to say some. But so this is my box. And Mike has a box, and Boisy has a box of cases like that.
How many did you end up making of those injection molded?
There are 1,000 of them.
1,000?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are they all red?
Yeah, they're all the same color.
So still a few left.
They'll be there for a little while. So these are boxes, the boxes that I had, Tim make for me. But there's still quite a few of these left too. So the problems are created with getting the production level stuff going, right? So trying to solve these problems, down in the bottom left corner is the Mark Blair circuit board that already existed. The top left is the circuit board that I'm using. I think John Strong is using some of his gear. Well, he bought some from me anyway. I assume he used them for making games for the CoCo. And there's a protoboard that I designed that fits the same cases. If you want to work on a custom cartridge circuit for the CoCo and then put it in a nice plastic case, Mike's got the protoboards available for sale, and Mike, Boisy, we all could help you with get the cases if you want them. So there, help us out. That'll help sell some stuff.
I want to publicly thank John. He shared his board design with me to do my games. There's no use for everybody to duplicate efforts.
Yeah, well, I agree. But what we really want is more better games, right? I was going to say mo better, but I didn't know if that was...
Mo better.
All right, so this is really what it's really about. We want to sell more cartridges, but we want to do it by giving you better games, right? Give you a bit more better games, and then maybe you'll buy more cartridges. I think that's a win-win kind of situation. So, what are the kind of things that I think would make the games better, right? Better audio, more content, great gameplay, right? The gameplay part, well, I can't really necessarily, I can work on that, hopefully have a good idea, but that's not a technological problem. but we can enable better audio and have more space for the games, and that is a technology problem. So, this is identify the systemic problems, right? Well, audio is a weakness for the CoCo. So there's two audio sources on the CoCo. There's a 1-bit and then there's a DAC. But both of them require a lot of CPU intervention to produce tones. You have critical timing requirements to produce stutter-free audio. You eat up a lot of CPU resources. This is something not a lot of people realize, but if you want to play higher notes, out of the bass up into the tenor, whatever. If you want to play higher notes, you have to hit those audio sources. You have to flip that bit that much more often. That's that much more CPU that you have to use.
And you will notice in a lot of games, stuff that does get music, the higher notes aren't there.
Right.
For that very reason.
That's right. So, all right. So there's no way for the stock CoCo to offload audio. So what we really need is an audio chip. Well, it's not as big as I was hoping it would be. Okay. Well, so the audio chip that I'm looking at is the TI SN76489 AN specifically. This is it's got 3-channel audio tones and 1-channel noise. It's used in a lot of systems, contemporary to the CoCo back in the day, the BBC Micro, the ColecoVision, the TI-99. You look on the webpage, it lists a whole bunch. Also, this is essentially the same chip that was used in the Tandy 1000. So there's a certain I don't know, seems appropriateness to using it with the CoCo. Plus, they're still available in quantity and for less than $1 a piece. So, not too bad, right? All right, so I built a proto. This is using one of my proto PCBs, obviously, and put it together, you know, point-to-point wiring, whatever. Posted a video back in January, playing some music on it, and you know, it sounds kind of cool. And so there's your first step, prototype, see if you get something working. Okay, so moving on, talking about graphics, sound, and other data. You know, bigger is not always better, but you know, having more audio-visual data is usually desirable in games, right? Because you want more graphical assets for more characters or more variations, different animation sequences. You know, you might want something where they do a little something different when they turn left than when they turn right, or whatever. You want more and longer songs, right? We've all played those games that you like the game, but that once you get 10 minutes of do 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 do, you know, it gets a little old. So you'd rather have it a few bars longer, right? So who doesn't want more content in the game, right? You know, you don't.
And John Linville's supposed to have been CoCo 1 and 2 games. But if you look at the CoCo 3 game, your size, your resources, your graphics gets a lot larger. So this even reinforced what he's talking about even more when you're talking about a CoCo 3 game.
Yeah. So, all right. So we already have a solution that's been offered to us, been in our hands for 25, almost 30 years. The Greg Zumwalt design, published in the Rainbow in June of 1990. I think that's the right date. It's basically it's the design that's used in RoboCop and Predator. So it's a proven design. It may not be an ideal design for every game, but it's there and it works, and it should be a lot better than having to keep your game at 8K or 16K, right? So we already have the design. So I put it together with my my audio prototype. This one's a laid out PCB. But so there's a 27C 512 EEPROM, that's 64K. You know, it could be bigger, but you're gonna have to use a different chip or 2 chips or something. The basic design will get you at least twice as big, but I think it'll go like 4 or 5 times as big, or 4 or 8 times as big. One way or another, it can still be bigger, just need a different design, a different layout. Same basic design. For that matter, you know, we could use a different ROM bank switching design if there was a reason to do so. But my thinking is, let's get the hardware out there and get some bigger games, and then, you know, if we have bigger games that still have special needs, we can try to accommodate those later, right? All right. So anyway, we're trying to address real problems with practical solutions in this case. So we've got inexpensive hardware for audio synthesis. We're going to add the expansion of the cartridge capacity. But these, you know, of course, it'll fit the new boards fit the cases we've got. The cases fit the boxes. You know, it's an extension of what we've already worked on. So I think we should take advantage of our existing joystick adapter as well when we're writing any new games, just because, well, for that matter, you don't really need to do much because they basically work with the old, anyway, as long as you're using the old joystick ports. Anyway, just to throw a plug in there, we've got solutions if you want to use digital joysticks, so, you know, we've already kind of got you covered. All right, so that's the key part here. We want to enable new CoCo software releases that are fun to play, and which offer beautiful graphics and sound to today's retro gamers. All right, so this represents my capacity for questions. No, it's not our time around.
I think half of those are leaking.
Exactly.
Are we gonna get to hear the audio this weekend?
It's yeah, come by my table. It's over in the far corner. I haven't plugged it in yet, but I've got a cartridge ready.
Can't wait to hear it.
How about Tim?
Well, why don't you put the screw into the label?
All right, Gary.
That's the way I like it. How's that? Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe I missed this, but the sound, is there a separate audio output or is that routing back?
It routes back through the CoCo.
Does it route?
There's a pin on the cartridge connector.
And just to verify what you said, independently, this is exactly what I was planning to do. The only difference is I was going to have, besides going in, audio jack out, plugging in the amplifier. And John beat me to the punch and did a very good job at it.
There's no reason you couldn't build a card that has an amplifier that goes out too,
Yeah,
and the software can still run on both versions.
right, exactly. And that's the sweet part of it. The chip is small, it fits in the cartridge, small area. I have the sample of the other chips. They're nice, they're great, but they're big. And it's gonna make a cost, it's gonna be above what we want. You guys will want to absorb as an extra price for each game. And this allows us to do something custom for each game. If I want to add a second chip in for stereo, we can add stereo chip for stereo, and it's still compatible with what
Right.
everything's done. So it's a great foundation.
Right. Well, so that's the thing. You know, a question that somebody would probably ask is why not just do a separate card, right? Well, we have a couple of versions of that already in the community that have never really been fully utilized by games. And why is that? Well, because you need the MPI, you need to own the separate card, and then they all have their own limitations. And this model, you know, you don't necessarily have to use this exact chip. You can do the same thing with another chip if you find one. So like the SAA 1099, which was used on the Game Blaster, I guess, is also fairly cheap and fairly small. So you could, and probably sounds better than these chips for a little more money. You could, if you wanted to build a game that used that chip, you could do it same model. Then the game goes with the hardware. I think it's a good model. It was good enough for Nintendo. And Sega, and that was done quite a bit, if you don't realize, in the 90s with video games. So I think this is a pretty good model as long as the chips are relatively cheap. Add a couple of dollars to the BOM cost, and yeah, it's a little more expensive per item, but whatever. Now, we could go the other direction and build a separate card, but the addressing that I'm using right now for the chip, or for both of the bank switching on the ROMs and for the audio chip, goes through the SCS, you know, which makes it incompatible with the floppy controller, right? Boisy will point out you can switch it with the MPI. You can switch the MPI to a different slot or whatever, but it's a complication. Anyway, if you wanted to produce a separate card, you have to solve the problem of, okay, which IO address do we burn up for that? And traditionally that's been a big argument whenever you want to pick one in the community. Now, whether or not we still need to maintain compatibility with the addressing on an MFM controller from 1983, I really don't think so, but you know, who knows, right?
And there's one other minor complex which can be solved, is that the TI chip does come on with the sound on.
Yeah, no, that's true, and so
if it's a separate sound card, you're going to have to do something to solve that problem.
that's true. You would need something, especially if it had an external audio. But I mean, that's the beauty of having the software built in with it. Anyway, any other questions? Go ahead.
You have those prototype boards with all the chips in it available now, or?
With the holes?
No, completely built, all we gotta do is put our EEPROM in it?
No, I'm not selling those. Go ahead.
Any theories as to why the sound chip and the speech sound pack never caught on?
Because it's hard to program, and because it's harder than an automated program. I actually did some stuff around December experimenting with that, and posted a video there, but basically it takes a lot longer to update the registers on this chip, on those cards, than it really ought to, and I don't really have a good reason to explain why. It's just for some reason, it's just super duper slow.
I know this is John's there, but if he doesn't mind, I have some additional information on that.
Okay.
Okay. Years ago, I looked at that, and actually Steve George talked about is the chip that controls the sound speech actually pretty slow. And it's non-deterministic, you have to just wait, and it can be different amounts of time. So it was very hard to program because of that speed. The second reason, because it really didn't take off, is because of the cost. The reason I used the Orchestra 90 in mind is when I started making my games, that cost had come down, and we actually bought and was selling those at our booth at CoCoFEST for less than $15, compared to something that was normally like $90 in the sound speech track. Plus, it was very hard to program. The Orchestra 90 was very easy to program, but CPU intensive. And so you have a cost. How, you know, if it costs us less, people doesn't have it. So it's a chicken and the egg type thing.
Sure.
Great sound chip, but hard to program, as he says. And it had that reputation even 25, 30 years ago.
Do you have like an emulation environment program?
No, I don't have any kind of emulation set up. You know, talk to Eric Gavrlik, is that the right way to pronounce it?
Sure.
He you know, he's master of the CoCo MAME these days, and I mean, this part should exist in MAME already. It should be trivial, for some definition of trivial, a simple matter of programming, just to hook it up, and it should work.
Yeah, most sound chips are in MAME. Okay. There is emulators for a lot of the sound chips. I haven't looked for the TI as far as the emulator. I know the AY series. There is emulators from libraries you can use for Windows to play with those before you transfer the stuff to the actual hardware.
Anyway, if you want to contact me, I'm not hard to reach. Go ahead.
Just have a quick question about the chip itself. I know it generates tones and sounds on its own. Can it also do PCM, like play samples?
No, can't play samples, or I think you might be able to trick it into some samples, but you have to trick it. There's a procedure to do, and generally it's not really made for that. Let's put it that way.
The AY series is well known to be able to do that. It's the 4-bit. In some cases, people restrict it to do 5 bits because I've investigated both chipsets, and again, I think it can be done on the
because you're basically just manipulating the volume.
Manipulating the value, and I haven't played with that part of it yet.
Yeah.
Because we've been independently working on these things and checking spots so we don't step on each other. He was doing the hardware, so I said, hey, I'm going to let him do the hardware. And I've been playing on the soundware side, and working with that. I have a simple MIDI converter to do that, so I'm prepping to use his boards and stuff for some of the games.
Cool. All right, there's a few links if you're interested. There's a link at the bottom to my YouTube video that demonstrates the sounds. Of course, if you're here at CoCoFEST, just come over to my table, I'll plug it in for you and you can listen.
I do have one. Are you planning on selling the boards to?
Yeah, well, it's not settled, but right now I'm not planning on selling the boards, at least not in an open, you know.
Well, I meant like to developers, I guess, who work that out or something.
We'll work that out. You know, we've been trying to establish a bit of a brand for you know, we've got one of the games we have for sale from Evan Wright called Flooded. We're trying to reach out and get some more authors writing CoCo games or whatever. So we're investigating, you know, how exactly that's going to be enabled. Again, the board themselves a little bit difficult to construct. So I'm not sure I want to do tech support on kits, you know what I mean? It's not that big a deal, but you know, it's still something. It's a lot of soldering. So we'll see.
And, you know, I agree with him totally because, you know, I actually used his board for my game cartridges because I had less solder with his board than I had the other board. And I was working and sitting down and learning KiCad and designing my own board. And so, you know, it's not a big deal. You start at 1 or 2. You got to do 20 for a fest.
Yeah. Well, plus,
it becomes a big difference.
well, plus the plain ROM boards is basically just soldering in the ROM plus a capacitor. These have 6 ICs on them, plus you know, 6 capacitors, a couple of resistors, actually a 7th capacitor. Anyway, you know, it's just that much more soldering and placing and remembering which chip to put in which slot. There's a couple of chips of the same size, so you can easily swap them and put them in the wrong spot, and your board doesn't work, and why doesn't it work, that sort of thing. Anyway, we'll have to work that out.
Hey John, so the focus now is on sound. Down the road, do you think you may start doing some stupid DG tricks on the 68 47 and use a do something with a chip there, or introduce like a new graphic chip into?
So you know that's you possibly could do something like that, but the CoCo cartridge port isn't really amenable to bringing graphics in, so you have to basically plug the monitor into whatever you plugged in on the outside. There are people who've done that, and even then back in the day, of course, and more recently, who's got the 9918 chip or whatever that's, is that the right, whatever, this is the one for the TI series.
Yeah, there's one for the TI series. I don't recall the guy's name. It's a Spanish surname, I believe.
Yeah, Lewis, I think, something. But,
yeah, it could be Lewis. Where he did that.
So anyway, I mean, it is possible to do it, but you know, it doesn't integrate as well. So I wouldn't look forward to that. Let's put it that way.
The other thing, it has been announced that there's being work on a replacement Jimmy chip with CoCo, if you've seen that. And Brendan, I don't know what all you're doing on any enhancements to the 6847 with your the VGA adapter. Is it just going to be just strictly VGA adapter, or did they add it to that?
I'm adding things to it.
And so he would be the guy to talk to about what might be happening there. And I'll admit, I haven't been updated on this project yet.
Sure.
So there is some other alternatives. As John says, again, it's not the easiest thing to do with doing that.
All right. Well, I think that's all for me.
John has done and what he's done for the community. And I think he's done a great amount.
So next up will be Evan Wright, pretty much as soon as he's ready. So if anybody wants to reach in the other room and tell Evan that we're ready for him.
Is there a copy?
I hope I wasn't overstepping my bounds.
No, that's fine.
Okay, I want to make sure. Because you did, I make sure I back off ahead of time.
That's fine.
Because what you're doing is really great.
Thanks.
My idea is you do it, I don't have to do all that work.
Right. All right.
And when we get settled down with my tool, I'll contact you and let you know what I got.
Cool.
Because I can pull a single note channel or a track out on MIDI to a single note right now. But I haven't had samples that kind of meant to finish my tools. And I'm also I'm playing some with the YM for the other chips. And also I may be able to build a translation table to translate the frequency back into the TI chip.
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, I mean, there's an overlap of functionality. The other chips have some more flexibility in the wave shapes and that sort of stuff. But yeah.
Little costly.
Yeah, no, it really is. I mean, you can get them.
It's the best tool. You know, I've had those looking at it, you know, came to that conclusion. You looked at it, came to the same conclusion. And so it's
cool. All right.
But I just knew what some of the stuff like that.
I sent stuff in the action here.
Yeah, that's auction stuff.
So just so, I'm sorry to interrupt before you get started. This camera and microphone are going to be on probably all day unless we break for lunch, so just be aware of that.
So I should check my hair every time I walk.
Everything you say can and will be broadcast on the internet.
Okay.
What did you call people saying?
Just in case people aren't aware of that. Full disclosure.
You don't happen to have a presentation remote or no way you've done, do you?
I do not. Neither of the above.
Yeah, you know what I meant.
Oh, that would be awesome. Sitting still for me is like putting me in a straitjacket. Or tell people that's why I became a teacher. So that way I get paid to walk around. I don't have to sit down.
So would you ask me if we can play digital hangouts into our full model out? Depending on what you hear from volunteer, like John Linville taking over the website, and Steve Work runs the website, but I think John would like to put it into something that he knows better, more easy to develop in. So, and then Randy has offered to take a look at our database and force the SQL.
Waiting for the presentation. Sure.
Is there a specific time? Result to start?
I don't know, watch.
11:30.
I'll start yelling at it. What time is it then?
29 and a half.
Okay, well, I guess I better get on it.
Cruise it every now and all this stuff.
Yeah, I think we're behind schedule.
Oh, should I just start then? And when
I don't know. Are you waiting for your?
I'm just waiting for the
looking
projector,
thing for
the
you?
remote, so I can just walk around while it talks.
Yeah. I mean, it's.
I'll be cool. I'll be
There we go. Thank you.
And unfortunately, though, what's on the screen does not show up well on the camera. Nothing I can do about that with the light.
Awesome, thank you.
Hopefully the batteries are good.
Okay, we're gonna go here.
No.
All right, there we go. Okay, awesome. So, there we go. There's retros. Okay, should I start? Did that work?
Good.
Okay. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you about this 8-bit text adventure system I've put together. I apologize in advance. I'm like the world's laziest PowerPoint slide designer. Like I don't use any templates or anything. Like if I were grading, if I were a high school student and I turned that in, I'd probably get a bad grade. Professionalism. So I'll tell you all about this thing. There's kind of a funny story though. When I got the email about like the CoCoFEST presenter list coming out, I was like, oh cool, the presenter list is out. I wonder who's on it, right? And I jumped on the website to see who was on it. And I was like, oh, I'm on it, right? Because when the call went out for presenters, I had sent off an email, it was late at night, I was tired, and I had totally forgotten that I had like submitted this thing for the presentation. So I'm like, oh right, I guess I better get on that project since I'm going to be talking about it. So that's kind of how I found out that I was going to do this talk. So the email kind of describes it as I was describing a prototype I was making, and now it's a lot farther along. So I'll have more to show you. So obviously that's me on the left with a bad Photoshop job there. I love text adventures. I've played them when I was a kid, and they kind of blew my mind. I've sort of had this fascination with them ever since. When I'm not doing the old retro 8-bit stuff, I teach high school computer science and game programming just north of here on Swift Road at the Technology Center of DuPage. And then in the evenings, I teach 2 classes down at College of DuPage. So I do lots of programming. Also, I don't know if anybody else had this problem. It's really hard to have like a coding deadline, like CoCoFEST, like right around tax time. Doing this project made it really hard to get my taxes done on time. So next year I'll plan better, or we'll have to move it fast or something. I'll probably just have to plan better. So I'm always looking for some cool project to do, and this being the 40th anniversary of the home computer, which is kind of mind-blowing, I thought, well, I should do something that kind of ties all three of these classic computers together. But then I thought again, and it turns out that like I really don't like the 6502 processor. So, like, ugh. So when I think of processors, I think of the 6502 being that Swiss Army knife that just has tweezers. Like, that's it. Like, it's useless, right? Oh. And then the Z80 is like the Swiss Army knife that's like 3 inches wide and it has the spork and the magnifying glass that you never use. And then the processor that's in the CoCo, the 6809, is kind of like that Swiss Army knife that has exactly what you need and only what you need. Like, it's beautiful. So I thought this would be a much cooler way to do this. So we'll put the CoCo in the middle. I'll do that one first because I love that processor. Then if I have time, I'll get to the TRS-80, and then dead last, I'll do the 6502 stuff. So what I made is this text adventure system that you can run on your PC. You can build your game visually on your PC, and it saves it as a data file. And then I wrote another tool that takes that data file and then exports assembly language for, right now it does it for the CoCo and the TRS-80. So you can actually write a text adventure game that in binary format, like for the original machines, without ever touching assembly code or BASIC. Right? You just build your game in the GUI, and it magically exports the game. So if there's time, I'll give you guys a quick demo. Stuff that helped me do this project, there's a lot of info out there. The book on the right is really good at, it's in BASIC, but it gives you a really good idea of how a text adventure game is put together under the hood, at least how the data is all organized. I also looked at a lot of the Infocom stuff because they're kind of the gold standard for text adventures. Inform is a reverse engineering of the, it's a language for writing text adventures that compiles down to the Infocom virtual machine. So the Infocom language, the virtual machine is still around. There's some documentation on it out there that you can get. There's a compiler that you can use to, if you want to write an Infocom game to run on your PC or whatever, you can do that now. So there's tools out there. The virtual machine's kind of been reverse engineered. So I looked at that stuff to see like how did Infocom do it, right? And I tried to mimic them as much as possible. So here's like a whole the laundry list of tools I needed. Obviously, I need some computers. The CoCo stuff I used LW Tools, which is designed to run on Linux. So I used Cygwin. Cygwin's like a little fake Linux shell you can run on your PC. There's some other good tools out there. Z80 Assemb. It's a assembler that developed by Matthew Reed that specifically targets the TRS-80. So when you build your file, it sticks the little headers on there for you that actually make it a runnable file. Because anytime you can make a program for an old machine, you have to figure out, okay, well now I've got the program, but you got to put a wrapper around it so the operating system can load it. Then I got some hardware to get the stuff actually onto the real machines. I used a CoCo SDC. The TRS-80 Model 1 has an analogous thing called the Fred. It's like a hard drive designed by Fred. That's how it's actually spelled. That's not a typo. And then for debugging, I used MAME. Because MAME, you can start it up in debug mode, and you actually get a debug. Yes, it's cool. You get a debug window. It shows you all the registers. You can look in the memory, and you can step through your code. Pardon?
Watch points.
Yes, watch points. Oh my God, yes. Who the heck is writing to this memory? Yep. Right, set a watch point. There you go. I went through, I didn't even, when I was in college, nobody even taught me about the debugger. Like afterwards, I'm like, oh my God, there's this debugger thing I could have been using this whole time. Anyway, the debugger is definitely your friend, especially with assembly. So, how does a text adventure basically work? What do you need to make a text adventure? Text adventures are, well, I hope you like data tables, because there's lots and lots of tables. Tables of nouns, tables of verbs, tables of prepositions, tables of articles, tables of objects in your game, tables that map tables to other tables, jump tables. So there's lots and lots of data tables that describe the stuff in the game. There's the parser, which takes your text command and it figures out what to do with it, tries to figure out what you're talking about, and I'll talk about that in a sec. And then you need subroutines, and that's like, if I type kill troll, then it's like, okay, print this message, subtract 5 off the troll's health. If the troll's health is 0, print that he's dead. So you need some way of actually writing code. And the thing I made actually has its own simple little language where you can kind of write JavaScript-y like code in the window, and then that gets compiled down. But you don't have to touch BASIC, you don't have to touch assembly language. Like here's a partial map from Zork. You can see there's kind of this graph structure. These are all the rooms, that they all hook together. They have like north, south, east, west, up, down. So directions are properties of something in a text adventure. There are other properties too. Like here's like an inventory, or here's another way of kind of looking at a text adventure. Like I'm in a room called cave, right? So I'm a child of the cave, and then I've got some stuff in my inventory. So that stuff is a child of me, right? So every object not only needs to know like its directional properties, it also has to have a parent property, like who do I belong to, right? So by putting those properties on objects, you can describe how they relate to the other objects. So basically what you need is some way to represent a graph and some way to represent a tree to model the world inside your text adventure game. Now it turns out that there's a really, really easy, elegant way to do this, and that's just using a table. And that's what I found out by looking at the basic books. They just made a big two-dimensional array for describing everything in the world. So like in a game like Zork, there's like basically an entry for everything in the table. Every object has an entry, every room has an entry. There's no distinction between objects and rooms. They're the same thing. They know who owns them. Maybe they have a description. Maybe they have their directional properties. And then they have little bits on them that says like, is this thing portable? Is it flammable? Can I put things in it? Can I put things on it? Like there's little bit flags on the objects that say what you can do with those objects. So everything is represented as a big table like that. There's other tables too, the nouns, verbs. The parser needs all this stuff. It needs to be able to get rid of the white space. Like basically it chops out things like the and tries to remove the noise from the user input. So what else? Strings or string tables. Like anytime you want to print out a message, you're basically saying print string number 3 in the table. You search through the table, you go three times, find the string you want to print it. Fortunately, like doing table stuff is pretty easy in assembly, which is good because there's lots and lots of tables. So what else? You need tables to map things to other tables. So if you type in like something like get the rusty iron sword, or get rusty. The parser says, okay, you typed in rusty. What object does that refer to? So you have some structure that says, okay, rusty is word 0. Word 0 belongs to object 5, and then there's the data for the rusty lamp. So we need stuff to map. When you type in the word sword, the game has to have some way of mapping that word to an actual object. So that the parser kind of does all this stuff for you. You need jump tables, so if I try to kill the troll, then call this function. So you need tables that tell you, that call your routines for you. What else? Parsing. I can now come up with an almost infocom-like parser. The whole deal is that the first part is just to identify the parts of speech. Figure out what's the verb. Is there a preposition that splits up the sentence? Can you find the direct object and the indirect object? It gets a little tricky because verbs like look at is actually 2 words, but it's 1 verb. Like the at is a preposition that's part of the verb, so you got to take that into account. Once you've identified the parts of speech, then you have to look in the tables to see if those words actually exist, right? If the guy types in gets fish, right? And there's no fish in the game, you need to print out, I don't understand the word fish, right? So that's kind of you're preventing the user from entering stuff that the game doesn't recognize. Once the user has actually entered valid input, then you have to try to do that mapping, try to figure out, okay, what object in the game is this guy referring to by using this word? And this is where it gets a little tricky. You want to filter out objects that the player can't see. So let's say there's 10 things in the world called door. When the player says open door, you want to get the door object that's most relevant to the player. So you want to filter out things the player can't see, and that way you can kind of do some disambiguation stuff. What else? Okay, and then if the player typed in something and you don't have that in your immediate surroundings, then you say oh, you don't see that. The game recognized it, but you couldn't map it to an object because you can't see that object. So you kind of have to filter out. Or the parser is trying to it's going through all these checks to finally see if it can map those words you typed into specific objects in that table, in the object table. Okay, so I know it was a lot. So the thing that I've put together that I've got running out there, it's actually 2 programs. It really needs to be merged into one program. One is the GUI where you actually make the text adventure, And then the other is the tool that takes the data file from the first step and then actually exports it out to code that you can then assemble. I'll show you that in a second. So here's what the GUI looks like. I'll bring it up in a second. And then, so the GUI cranks out an XML file that describes your game. It describes all the objects in your game, all the verbs, the vocabulary, all that stuff. And then the exporter takes that file, reads it, and writes out all those data tables. And it writes out the routines that your game needs that you've typed in. And then it actually cranks out assembly code, and then you just run the assembler on it, and it actually works. So there you go. Then you end up with a file that you can run in main, debug, figure out why it doesn't work. Okay. Matthew Reed, I don't know if he's watching this ever, he helped me out enormously on this. So not only did he write the Z80 assembler, he also wrote some disk tools that I had to use. And then I couldn't quite get it working on the TRS-80, and it turns out when you're running in disk basic, there's certain ROM routines you can't use. There's no way I ever would have figured that out. So it's thanks to him that like I had an assembler to use, I had disk tools to use, and then he even helped me out with some programming stuff. Ian Maverick down in Australia helped me with gave me some support when I was trying to build that Fred kit, and obviously Glenn's like Computer Club for getting me into the CoCo community, getting me hooked on this stuff. So there's there we go. So let me give you a demo. So here's what the GUI looks like. I know it's not like the most sophisticated thing yet, but this is a blank project, and up here there's project names. So let me call this like CoCoFEST. That's the name of our project. And then I can put in a welcome message like welcome to CoCoFEST 2017. Evan Wright version 1.0. I'll just leave it like that. Okay, and then I'll go one tab over. And now here's where I can start adding all those objects into the game. So by default, you get a couple of objects. You get an object called off screen, which is kind of the root of your tree. All of your objects hook up to that. If you want like something to disappear from the world, you move it off screen. There's a player, and there's also a room 1. You get a first room. So because the player has to be somewhere. So the description of the player is you're a wonderful person. You shouldn't care what you look like. Let's change that. I don't know. You are a sleep-deprived 45-year-old man. Am I 45? I'm not even sure. Old man. There we go. With no hair. With limited hair. There you go.
Takes less processing cycle.
There you go. Yeah. So let's go to room. Let's go to the room here. So I just selected the room from the drop down. So everything has a description. So I don't know. This is the conference room in the basement of the Heron Point Convention Center. And then here from these drop downs, I can say how I get to other rooms, and I can set those flags on the objects, like is this thing portable? Is it a supporter? Like can I put things on it? Can I put things in it? Is it open? Is it closed? Is it a door? Is it locked? Is it lockable? All those little bit flags that you can set that dictate your interactions with that object. All right, so let's add another. I'm going to add another room here. I'm going to click Add Room or Object. Hopefully it doesn't crash. Okay, so now I've created a new object. Let me set, I don't know. Hallway? Hallway, there we go. Perfect. Hallway. This is a drab hallway. A drab, wretched, no, it's not wretched. It's a drab basement hallway. Okay, I've totally lost my sense of direction in this basement. I don't know. To the north is the conference room. Thank you. Conference room. Okay. To the south is the, exhibit room.
I was going to say infinite void.
Infinite void. It's better. It's certainly an infinite void for cash and time. That's for sure. Okay, so the hallway, north is the convention center. So on the drop-down menu, I can say if I go north, I end up in Room 2. Okay, so that, do we change that? Let's go back to room 2 here. Oh, we didn't change it to convention, a conference room. Conference room, okay, there we go. So let's see if that worked. So now if the hallway, I say if I go north, I end up in the conference room. From the conference room, if I go south, I should end up in the hallway. There we go. If I wanted to give stuff to the player, like I want the player to have an inventory, I could make the parent of that object the player. Right? I could say this object is a child object of the player. That'll show up in the player's inventory. So I'll just add one object to the game here. CoCo 3. Description. This is an upgraded model. I don't know. Upgraded. I don't know, whatever. It has lots of RAM. Lots of RAM, not really. There we go. And you can say, so normally like in Zork, I don't know if you remember like the trunk of jewels or whatever, it describes it as like a trunk of jewels is half buried in the mud, right? It doesn't say, there's a trunk of jewels here, right? That gets really boring, like seeing that over and over and over again. Put nice descriptions on things that say like a rake is leaning up against the south wall. So that's how it's described to the player, not like, you see a rake here. That was one thing that was nice about the Infocom games. So let me just say, a CoCo 3 sits on a table, and I'll make it portable. And I'll make it a child of the conference room. There we go. Okay, so now let's see if this works here. So I should be able to, now I can add verbs to the game. I can add rules to the verbs that say like, if you want to pick up something, it has to be portable. If you want to unlock something, it has to be lockable. Otherwise, print an error message. You can write code in here, so this is like a little language that it understands. It's very, very simple. But it turns out text adventures really don't need anything complicated. You can make sentences, and this is where if I drop the CoCo 3 print, the CoCo 3 smashes on the ground, right? You can go and add. This is how you hook up the functions that you wrote to the user input. It's something called a sentence. Event rules, you can say like, every turn I want you to check these conditions and run some stuff. That would be like in Zork. The thief randomly pops up if you're underground, So every time you do something underground, the game's saying, okay, generate a random number, I don't know if it's 0, make the thief pop up, right? So you can add event handling like that. You can add variables. It's got its own little language in here. So now let me save it, and I'll call it, I don't know, CoCo demo .xml. There we go. Okay, so now I've saved that thing. I've saved that data file. All right, now let's go to, where is he? Where is he? This guy? Okay, so this is the glamorous little tool. This is just this empty window that actually does the translation for us. I'm going to export it for TRS-80 because I happen to have that emulator up. And the LW tools assembler is a little bit slow, whereas if you have a big project, it takes several minutes to assemble. The Z80 assembler just is like that. It's like lightning fast. So I'll just do that to speed things up. So I'm going to say export to TRS-80. And let's go find that file. CoCo demo. I hope this works. I'm going to open it. Export complete. Open the directory. Demo 1 Z80 CoCoFEST Z80. Uh-oh. All right. Might have a problem there. Looks like I put it in the wrong subdirectory. Let me just run that one more time and see if it puts it in the right place. Debug. XML to adventure. There we go. It's called XML to adventure. File. Export to TRS-80.
How does it know what to convert?
What to convert? Well, you have to select it. So I'm picking the data file. So what we just did was we exported our game to an XML file. Now we're going to open up that XML file and run it. Export complete. There it is. It's in a directory called CoCoFEST Z80. So let's go in there. So I've got to go out to my command prompt. Where am I here? That's running MAME. Sorry, I should have had this all set up. There we go. Okay, command. No, not command. Yeah, command. There we go. documents, Visual Studio 2013. Oh, sorry. I should have had this up. Move. No, not. Move table. So right now it's in my Visual Studio directories, which is kind of making it a little clunky. XML to 6809. All my projects are named like Test Project 4, which is really not very helpful. Debug. There you go. So you can see this is not ready for prime time yet. So now let's go into that CoCoFEST Z80. Let's look at what's there. So it's all assembly language files, right? So that thing, there's a generic shell for the game. It copies that in. It says, oh, you're a Z80 game. It copies in the Z80 shell. It writes out the data files, and I should just be able to build this thing. Build.sh. What happened? Welcome to Git. What? Hello. Assembling main.asm. Okay, so is there a command file here? dir star.cmd. There is. Cool. All right. So that's the output file, right? So I just ran the assembler. It built the file. Now I should be able to go to main here and say quick load CoCoFEST. No, wrong directory. CoCoFEST Z80 main. All right. Fingers crossed. Boom, there it is.
Wow. Nice.
There it is. We're in the conference room. A CoCo 3 sits on the table. And
Bid on CoCo.
bid. Yes, I have to add that. Get CoCo. Take it. You are carrying a CoCo 3, right? I'll leave it at that. I'll call that a win. I'm going to declare victory and run like hell. So there it is, and it works for the color computer too. So you can sit at that little tool, you can write your game, you just click those buttons, and it exports the whole thing as binary, and you can then take it on an SD card and go run it. So there it is. If anybody wants like a more complete demo, I'll be happy to show you that over at my table. There you go. So when it's more polished and more user friendly, I'll make sure that it gets uploaded where people can find it.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Thanks a lot, Evan.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So the next talk is John Strong at 1. I think is that. I think that's right. That's right. So we'll see you.
Taking a break?
Yeah.
Lunch break.
Yep. Lunch break. So yeah, John Strong at 1.
All it does is it's called through the ROM routine. So I have not done anything with like.
Can I just put this stuff up here for the auction?
Yeah, I think they'll just set it there. I think is all you need to do.
Halfway through it doesn't care if it starts over. Yeah, so I'm just using the ROM. Yeah, we can try it on
If you use the wrong routine, it should work. And the other question I had was like with an ice rate mentioning sometimes that you mentioned you have that random spirit water up. Do you also have move wall before they can go under rooms? Like you wander between rooms?
Yeah, so what you could do is you could write a command on one of those little code things that runs every
I'm thinking of bidding on one of the printers so my wife can yell at me for having more of those things that'll never get used.
Yeah, I've never been to like
I brought a small little, I was gonna bring so much more, but it's hard, to part with it. And you know you'll never use it, but it's just so hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, I brought
Yeah, I don't have
all
anybody
my
saying
magazines, and most of the set of rainbows. I gotta bring it in.
I have so many doubles and triples, but I still can't bring myself to.
and then
See, that's the thing, it's like, I've had these,
And I know it's silly because.
I mean, I've had them for 25 years.
You could do it. It would be.
Well, the thing with me is I haven't. I had them all when I was younger, and then when I got into PCs, just ended up just getting rid of everything.
Yeah.
And now it's taking so long to get all of it back that I'm so hesitant to get rid of it.
Yeah, see, for me, it's like I kept doing all the hardware and stuff.
You're a smart guy. I wish I was half as smart to do that.
Well, you know, that was the thing when the Radio Shacks were clearing stuff out.
Yep.
I just went on a buying spree because, like, you could
Back
buy-
in like the early 90s, right? When they were
like 92-ish.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I picked up a new floppy drive rig, you know, from the Radio Shacks for brand new. It was like $45.
back then, like a year before, it was $200.
Yeah,
Or $250.
Yeah, it was marked down from like $229 or something, to like, you know, $49 or $45 or whatever it was. And like all the game cartridges